Welcome back to Tom's Garage. It no cranky. We fixy. Hang with. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome. Ooh, a butterfly. Welcome back, guys. Another video. Today we are working on a FS91R, very common, very popular little weed eater. It won't crank for nothing. Here it is. FS91R. I'm going to go through the process of troubleshooting and diagnosing why it won't crank, and we're going to figure it out. Okay, the first thing I did was I dumped all the fuel out of it and put my known good fuel in it and give it a good purging. The purge bubble's filling up pretty good. It's got good flow through the carburetor. Oh, let's see here. Let's chokey. Let's give it a pull. Unchoke it, see if that helps. Nothing. Hold the throttle down, unchoke. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So the first thing I'll do is pull the air filter cover off. Get rid of that for now. I'm gonna pull this cover off too to access the sparky plug. Let's see, it's unchoked, throttle plate is fully open. Spray some carb cleaner in there, something flammable. Nope, still ain't hitting. It's not even hitting or nothing. Let's pull the spark plug out. Whew, it's wearing me out already. Okay, pull the spark plug out. It looks nice and clean. It's a little wet, so we know it's getting fuel. We squirted it full of carb cleaner, so let's check the spark. Good ground right there. Let's see how well you can see that. I doubt you can see it on camera, but let me just see if it's... Yeah, it's got good fire, but something feels kind of strange in there. It don't sound good. So, we know it's getting fire, we know it's getting fuel, and I'm gonna go as far as to slap a new CMR 6H NGK plug in it just to make sure the plug wasn't fouled, because we know we're getting fire to the boot. Now we're going to see if we get fire to the plug. Slap a new plug in it just to make sure that's not simply what it is. Simply what it is. All right. She's got a new plug in it. Ooh, boy, that was tight. Well, the new spark plug didn't help. So the old plug was probably still good. So we'll pull the plug back out of it. Pull the plug back out of it. It's probably going to be in a valve train because we know it's getting fuel. It's got good spark, new spark plug. We know it's got compression. I can feel it when I pull it. So, next thing to check is the valve train. Because a lot of times these valves will get out of adjustment or get too tight, or they'll get too loose and you'll feel too much resistance, too much compression. But it don't feel like it's got too much compression, but it still has compression, but it certainly don't feel low on compression. We're gonna pop this valve cover off right here, and we're gonna see what it's doing. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this cover off. Go ahead and pull this cover off, get it out of our way. Pull that cover off, get it out of the way. Get better access to everything that's going on in here. Okay. Pop this whole valve cover off. Okay. Make sure you always replace your valve cover gasket whenever you take this valve cover off. These things get hard and brittle and they will not seal again. All right. Let's see, bring the piston up. That's top dead center right there. I can see that, but I don't know if it's on the compression stroke or, now there's a little wiggle. Let me go 360 with it. There it goes. Well, I still feel a little wiggle. Let's see, I'm gonna put it. There's a little arrow on the flywheel and it is hard to see. Let me grab a flashlight. Well, that's kind of difficult to see. I'm gonna have to put the camera in my hand. Let's see, there's an arrow and I will show you when I find it. Right there is an arrow and it needs to be pointing directly at that. I'm going to take my ink pen, paint pen, and highlight it. I can reach down in there with it. All right. I put a little white dot on the flywheel. Yeah, I don't know how well you can see that in there, but let's see. I'm going to mount this on the stand and see if I can get a better shot of it. There's an arrow right there under that white paint mark, and it needs to be pointing directly at that bottom coil mounting screw. That's the coil. You got two screws. The one on the bottom, that little arrow on the flywheel, that tells you it's at top dead center. But is it at top dead center on the compression stroke? Or is it just finishing this exhaust stroke? Because it is a 4-stroke. So we know it's at top dead center. And let me grab my feeler gauge. 10 thousandths is what they want. And you can go to Stihl and get this little feeler gauge. It's got to have this little tip on the end of it. You got to have that little tip because it's got to go. This rocker has got like a little flap coming down each side covering the end of the valve. And you got to be able to get between them flaps to get in there. Just like that. You can't use just a regular feeler gauge. I have taken a regular feeler gauge and I have taken my little pair of scissors and cut them to fit. But you've got little flaps on each side coming down around that valve stem. But to me, the valves feel pretty good. That one's a little bit tight, but it's still pretty good. Still no cranky issue. Well, pulling it, you see the valves aren't moving at all. Look at that. No wonder you still got compression, because the valves aren't opening. Now it's going to be more than a valve issue. It's going to be a camshaft issue. But you can see those valves are not moving at all. So let's set this thing up in the little stand over here. Pull that cover off and I'll show you how to check out the camshaft, maybe replace the camshaft if it's bad. Maybe it's, well, it's really all it can be is a camshaft. They're plastic. They can sometimes give up their little ghost. Yep, let's get it set up over here. Pull the starter off. Pull the starter off. All right. And this is the little cover we're going to remove. The cam sits behind that. And to do that, we got to pull the starter cup off of it. 13 millimeter. And it's a right hand thread, so lefty loosey. Lefty loosey. There's the nut. And that will just come right off. Starter cup. And what we want to do is take these 4 screws out, and this cover will come right off. There's 2 spots on here, one on each side. Right there, shine the flashlight. Right there is where you will see a point where you can stick a screwdriver and pry that gasket sealer off. And there's a spot on the other side just like it. Yep. So we're going to pull that cover off and see what is going on with the camera shaft. Reach across you over here, grab my Torx 27. A little shorter one. Okay. Okay. Uh-oh, money. And we'll take the screwdriver and just stick it in there, and we'll just pry that thing off like that. Break that seal. Pull the cover off. That pin, this pin right here will hold the camshaft. You've got another pin that will hold the cam followers, and these will come out. Okay. Boy, look at that cam. Yeah, that thing is boogered. Yeah, look at that thing. That is just melted. That cam is melted. The lobe is wore completely off of that cam. So what we're going to do is pull that cam. First thing we're going to do is take a 8 millimeter or a 5/16, and we'll loosen these. This is how you adjust the valves right here, these 2 nuts. We're going to back them way off and get the rocker so we can get these push rods out. These push rods will go down and they'll sit right on top of these 2 cam followers. So let's get the push rods out. Get the push rods out. Get your push rods out, and then you do. Okay, let me back these nuts off. If these push rods fall down in here, you can just take your magnet and pull them right out, because they're metal. These are metal. Everything else is aluminum, so your magnet won't stick to anything else. The rocker arms, of course, are metal, but that's a good way to do it. If the push rods fall down in there, take it up, spin it out of the way, and there you go. There's your little push rod. Isn't that cute? I want to make sure they're not bent. Spin them around in your fingers. We'll do the same thing over here. Spin this one around and off of that. Grab the other little push rod. You can see the intake push rod is nice and clean, but the exhaust is kind of rusty, nasty, corroded, pitted. But it's not bent either. Huh. Okay. Now, take your cam followers. They just go in there with this pin. You probably just pull it all out at once because these followers are stuck inside that camshaft right there. Rah. There we go. Just kind of open them up a little bit, see how they work. They just follow that cam and they'll just kind of follow the lobe on that cam. Just like that. Now when you put this back in, you'll see how they're kind of offset from each other. This one's over here and this one here is up a little bit. They're not perfectly straight across. And you'll notice the holes coming down are the exact same way. They're kind of offset from each other. So we'll set that down and then we'll pull the cam out of it. Yeah, that cam doesn't have a lobe anymore. Makes you wonder if there's any pieces anywhere down in the engine. So yep, there's no lobe left. Used to be here, but you can see that bad boy is worn slap out. You can see it's just melted. Don't know what would cause that. Maybe lack of lubrication. I doubt it's lack of lubrication, but it just gets hot. Age. This is owned by a landscaper, so he just uses it all the time. That thing's probably got a whole lot of hours on it. And that is that. Let me grab my flashlight. I'm going to shine down in there and make sure I don't have any debris down in there in the crankcase. I see the bearing. It can't get past the bearing. Other than that, I don't see any debris. Okay, so what we're going to do, let me hit pause and I'll scrounge up some parts. Okay, here's the new cam. It is 4180 030 1800 is the part number. This was $12.55, so it's not an expensive part. I called a customer and told him, he's like, oh my God, the camshaft is bad. You know, you think of it as a car or a truck or something, you think, oh no, that's a major engine job, but it's not. Just a simple little part swap. There's the old one and there's the new one. See, it's got that lobe on there. And those little cam followers, they just sit right on there like that and just follow that little lobe. All right, now let's put this thing at top dead center. As I was showing you, I got a little piece of white paint on there. And there's the white paint and there's the arrow. So we know the piston is top dead center. So we're going to make this the compression stroke. So a little arrow right there. Right there. Point it right at that screw head. That is top dead center right there. So what we'll do is put it back together. Well, first thing I'm gonna do is clean that gasket material off of it. Get it nice and clean. Nice and clean. Just take a little razor blade, don't gouge it. Careful, don't gouge it. Get the excess off of it. And try not to drop any pieces of this down in that engine right there. Matter of fact, I'm gonna try to stuff a rag or something in there. That ain't gonna work. I'll take a little piece of paper towel and stuff in there. I don't want to be dropping things in there. So we'll just scrape the gasket. And don't gouge it. I need to give you a can of that gasket material remover. You just spray it on and it just liquefies it. Yeah. And we're going to do the same thing when we clean the cover. It's got a little groove right around here the gasket sealer will sit inside of, and this is completely flat. So I'm going to hit pause. I know y'all don't want to watch this part, but I'm going to clean this thing up. Alrighty, got her all cleaned up. Now, first thing we're going to do is put the cam gear in there. Let's see, cam gear there. What I'll do is just put some oil on this thing for a little bit of break-in oil. I need to use a little bit thicker oil. Grab a rag here. Get a rag. I'll just give this thing a good coating all over. And what you want to do is lobe down. You've got this blue mark right here on the very top. That's going to point straight up. And you've got an arrow on each side. Don't know how well you can see these arrows, but that needs to be perfectly horizontal. You'll see inside the engine there's two little lines there that are formed in the aluminum block, and they need to be lined up just to those, just like that. The engine is still at top dead center. The little arrow pointing right at that bottom coil mounting screw. And then we'll put the pin in it. Just perfect. Just like that. Arrows are sideways pointing at those little embossed things. And we've got the surfaces clean. Now we can put the cam followers back on. And just kind of open them up with your fingers. Stick that in there like that. Just like that. Okay. Now we'll put the push rods back in there. Okay, now that's got to go through the hole. There's a little divot on top of that follower right there, just like that. And then the intake push rod, make sure it goes in that little divot, just like that. Now we'll pick up the rocker arms, set them back up there. Get my fat finger out of the way. Must be magnetized a little bit. Oh, yep, we just lost it. That rocker arm feels like it's magnetized a little bit. Yep, there we go. Put it in there like that. I'm going to hold it with a screwdriver because it's sticking to that rocker arm. Get it in that little divot. Okay. And make sure that it's on top of the valve correctly. I'll show you. This thing has got, it's got those two little fingers that goes down beside the valve stem. I don't know how well you can see those two little fingers right under it. That's what holds it to the top of the valve stem. That way they can't just walk off. Okay. I'm not going to set the valves yet. I'm just going to run it down. Just going to run the nut down just to hold the rockers in place. I don't want to lose those push rods. There we go. Not all the way, just good enough to hold it. Okay, I'm going to put a little more oil on it. Just kind of let that run down a little bit. Okay, now we got that. And I'm going to use some more of this SI5900. This is what the techs at the other shop uses to install oil sumps and things back on the engines. So that's what I'm going to use on this. This is an instant gasket maker. Let me get rid of that little piece on top that's already starting to cure. All right, what I'll do, I got all this cleaned up real good, degreased. So what I'll do is just run a little bead. I'm gonna lay this on the table and do it. I had too much coffee this morning. I ain't got a stable hand. Sometimes you can't help putting too much. I don't like to take my finger and smear it around. But it's a nice continuous bead. But I think I will. Just kind of give it a little smoothing out there. Okay, there's that. Now what I'll do is grab the screws and we'll just stick it on there. Make sure these two pins goes in these two holes. Just give it light pressure. Light little pressure. Oh, let's see. I'm not going to use my impact, of course. But what I will use, just my trusty old manual T27 there. I'm going to run it down just where it just barely starts touching. And by the time I get all 4 screws in here, I'll go ahead and torque them down. I don't know the torque specs for this. I'm just going to guess at it and just give it a good oomph. Yeah, I figured if that sealant was good enough to put Kohler and Briggs and Kawasaki engines together, it's good enough to seal this little cover. And by golly, that's what we'll use. All right, all 4 are on there and run down, so now I'm just gonna turning the whole thing. Let me hang on to it here. I ain't gonna get them very tight. Yeah, there we go. That's gotta be good enough. Good enough. These are small screws going into aluminum. I don't want to take no chances of stripping anything. And by the time we get done putting this thing together, that sealer ought to be set. Because it's basically instant gasket maker. Okay, now we will set the valves. I'm going to move this camera. Okay, with my trusty little feeler gauge, 10 thousandths. That's why it's got that little divot on the end of it. I told you about these little fingers on the side that keeps it on the shaft on the end of the valve stem. So we'll just tighten this nut down till it feels a little drag. That's a little tight. Right there, it feels pretty good. Nope, a little tight. See that? But don't take much. That's pretty good drag right there. Little spark plug wires right in my way trying to do this. Oh, that's too tight. And that's pretty good right there. Pretty good drag. Pretty good drag there. All right, that's it. That is it for that. Now, always use a brand new valve cover gasket. And that part number for this brand new valve cover gasket is 4180-029-0500. Wow. That's just for the gasket. That's not for the valve adjusting kit. And the kit, you can get the valve cover gasket, the feeler gauge, and the copper washer that goes up there. But that comes in the valve cover gasket only also. So, okay. And make sure your valve cover doesn't have any cracks. Sometimes it'll crack right there around that hole. You got to make sure it ain't cracked at all anywhere, because it'll suck air and it won't run right. Just like a two-stroke engine, it has to be perfectly sealed. Even though it's a four-stroke, it still has to be sealed. Make sure you don't miss that copper washer. Give it a good oomph. All right. All right, all right. There's that. Now I'll put a new spark plug in it. Since I'm over here. All right, there's that. Now we'll move the camera back and put the rest of it back together. Okay, now we'll put the starter cup back on it. Make sure you don't cross thread that nut. Good Lord. There's that. Now we'll put the starter back on it. Put the starter back on it. Slide the camera back a little bit there. Okay. All right. And now we will put the cover back on it. Might as well go ahead and put this spark plug cover back on it too while we're at it. Oh, Lordy, Lordy. Okay, let's get it off this mount and set it on the table and see how she does. Okay, let's see how she fires up and runs. Purgy, purgy. Choke. Oh, I grabbed the throttle. Woo, all right, boys and girls, there's another video for you. A Stihl FS91R. Tuckered me out already. I gotta build up some of my stamina. Tell everybody I love them, tell somebody you love them, tell somebody you don't like you love them. Just don't tell nobody you love you hate them. Whew. Appreciate y'all watching the video, guys. I will see y'all on the next one. See y'all.